Millionaire catches her son with a cleaning woman and discovers a truth she had been hiding from herself. Catherine Brooks came home early that Thursday, eager to share the good news about the new contract she had secured for her cosmetics company. What she didn't expect was to find her only son, Michael, 24, passionately embracing a young woman in a blue uniform in the middle of the main living room. The scream that escaped her throat echoed through the entire mansion, causing the two to instantly pull apart. Michael was wearing a suit as if he had just arrived from the university where he studied business, and the girl wore the uniform of the cleaning crew that worked in their home. "Mom!" Michael exclaimed, his face red with embarrassment. "What is this, Michael?" Catherine asked, her voice trembling with indignation. "Who is this person?" The young woman, who couldn't have been older than 22, tried to explain. Her voice choked. "Mrs. Brooks, I can explain." "You will explain nothing," Catherine interrupted, pointing toward the door. "Get out of my house immediately. How dare you take advantage of the situation? Mom, stop this." Michael stepped in front of the girl, shielding her. "Jessica isn't taking advantage of anything." "Jessica." Catherine repeated the name as if it were a curse. "You know her name." "Of course I do. We've been dating for 4 months." The revelation hit Catherine like a punch to the gut. 4 months? How had her son hidden this from her for so long? She had always known about all his relationships since he was a teenager. "That's impossible," she murmured, feeling her legs weaken. Jessica, sensing the tension in the air, tried to leave discreetly, but Catherine stopped her with a sharp glare. "Where do you think you're going? I want answers now." "Mrs. Brooks, please, I never meant to cause trouble," Jessica said, her hands visibly shaking. "I truly love Michael." "Love?" Catherine laughed sarcastically. "A cleaning woman who loves a millionaire's son, how convenient." "Mom!" Michael exploded. "How can you say that? You don't know Jessica." "And you think you do?" Catherine shot back. "How long has she worked here? 3 months? And she's already reeled you in? What an interesting coincidence." During the heated argument, Jessica tried to step back but stumbled slightly. A golden chain, hidden under her blue uniform, slipped from her collar and swung in the air before she could tuck it back in. Catherine instantly paled. That chain. She knew that chain. "Where did you get that?" she asked, her voice now softer, almost a whisper. "What?" Jessica followed Catherine's gaze and realized she was looking at her neck. That chain. Where did it come from? Jessica instinctively raised a hand to her neck, shielding the jewelry as if it were the most precious thing she owned. "It's been mine forever," she replied defensively. "Why?" "Forever how?" Catherine pressed, taking a step forward. "Mom, what kind of question is that?" Michael interjected, confused by the sudden shift in tone. "Michael, let me talk to her," Catherine said, never taking her eyes off Jessica. "Answer me. How long have you had that chain?" Jessica hesitated for a moment, her hands still guarding her neck. "For as long as I can remember. It's the only thing I have from my family." The air in the room seemed to grow heavier. Catherine felt her heart race in a way she couldn't explain. "Your family?" she repeated. "I was raised at St. Mary's Orphanage in Albany," Jessica explained quietly. "They found me with it when I was a baby. It's all I have." Catherine gripped the wall to steady herself. St. Mary's. Albany. The words echoed in her mind like alarm bells. "Mom, are you okay?" Michael stepped closer, worried by her sudden pallor. I need a moment," Catherine murmured, quickly heading to the office. "Mrs. Brooks, I didn't mean to cause any trouble," Jessica called after her, but Catherine had already closed the door. Alone in the office, Catherine sank into the leather armchair, her hands trembling. Albany, St. Mary's Orphanage. That necklace identical to the one. No, it couldn't be. It was just a coincidence. It had to be. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now back to the story. Outside, Michael tried to calm Jessica, who was visibly shaken. "Jess, don't take it personally. My mom can be overprotective sometimes." "Overprotective?" Jessica wiped away a tear that had escaped. Michael, she looked at me like I was a ghost when she saw my necklace. It is strange, Michael admitted. I've never seen my mom react like that to jewelry. Maybe I should leave, Jessica whispered. I don't want to cause problems between you two. No, Michael held her hands firmly. Jess, I love you. No matter what my mum thinks right now, she'll come around. Are you sure? She looked scared. Scared of what? Michael asked, but before Jessica could answer, Catherine stepped out of the office. Her expression was more composed now, though still pale. She approached slowly, her eyes fixed on the necklace Jessica had left visible over her uniform. Jessica, you said you arrived at the orphanage as a baby. Yes, ma'am. And you never knew anything about your parents? Jessica shook her head. The nun said a very young woman left me there. She was crying a lot and said she'd come back as soon as she could, but she never did. Catherine closed her eyes for a moment, as if struck by physical pain. What year was that? 2002. I was born in January 2002. Mom, why all these questions? Michael was growing more confused. Catherine ignored her son and pressed on. Do you remember anything else? Any details the nuns told you? Jessica thought for a moment. Sister Margaret, who took care of me when I was little, always said my mother was very beautiful and young. She had long dark hair like mine, and that she kissed my forehead over and over before leaving me there. Each word felt like a stab to Catherine's chest. Long dark hair, a 16-year-old girl, January 2002. And this necklace, was it with you when you arrived? Yes. The nun said my mother insisted on leaving it with me. She said it was very important, that one day I'd understand. Catherine's legs nearly gave out again. She recognized that necklace. It was identical to the one her mother had given her and her twin sister when they turned 15. 2 identical necklaces, each with a pendant shaped like half a broken heart. Each sister kept one half. Can I see the necklace up close? Catherine asked, her voice barely audible. Jessica hesitated, but finally took it off and handed it to her. When Catherine saw the pendant, the world seemed to collapse around her. It was half a heart, with a tiny engraving that read, Eternal Love. The other half, which would complete the phrase, a mother's eternal love, had been locked in her safe for over 20 years. Where did your mother get this? Catherine asked, her voice a whisper. I don't know. Why are you asking? Catherine returned the necklace with trembling hands and quickly stepped back. I need to think. Both of you. Leave. Now. Mom, what's going on? Michael insisted. Leave! Catherine shouted. And for the first time in years, Michael saw tears in his mother's eyes. Jessica quickly grabbed her purse and left the mansion, followed by Michael, who was completely lost about the situation. Alone again, Catherine rushed to her room and opened the safe. There was the other half of the necklace, the one that read, From Mom to Daughter. She held both halves in her hands, imagining how they would fit together, and could no longer hold back her tears. Elizabeth, her twin sister. Her sister, who had left home at 16, pregnant and rejected by the family. Catherine remembered that day as if it were yesterday. Elizabeth had gotten involved with James, a poor boy who worked at the neighborhood garage. When they discovered the pregnancy, their father, a traditional and strict businessman, gave an ultimatum. Either Elizabeth got rid of the problem, or she would leave home forever. Elizabeth chose to protect the baby and left. Catherine, who at the time was more concerned with maintaining her position in the family and securing her inheritance, did nothing to stop her. Worse, when Elizabeth asked for financial help a few months later, Catherine pretended she never received the letter. Now, 22 years later, she was face to face with her sister's daughter, the niece she had helped abandon out of greed and selfishness. In the following days, Catherine couldn't focus on anything. Michael tried to talk to her several times, but she always made excuses to avoid the subject. The young man was visibly shaken, leaving the house to meet Jessica whenever possible. A week later, Catherine made a decision. She needed to be sure. She discreetly hired a private investigator to dig into Jessica Wilson Parker's past. That was the girl's full name. The investigator, a serious man named Robert Thompson, returned with information that confirmed Catherine's worst fears. The young woman was indeed abandoned at St. Mary's Orphanage in January 2002, Robert reported in his office. A young woman, about 16 or 17, left the child with the nuns. According to the records, she said she would return as soon as she got back on her feet. And did you find out who that woman was? Yes, Elizabeth Brooks Wilson. She gave her maiden name as a reference. Catherine closed her eyes. Elizabeth had used their maiden name, the confirmation she had both feared and paradoxically hoped for. What else did you find out about Elizabeth? Robert checked his notes. She got a job as a cleaner at a clinic in Albany a few months after leaving the child. She lived in a very simple rented room. According to neighbors, she always talked about getting her daughter back as soon as she could. Talked? Catherine noticed the past tense. Unfortunately, Mrs. Brooks, Elizabeth passed away in a traffic accident 3 years later, in 2005. She was on her way home from work when she was hit by a car. Catherine felt as if the world had stopped. Elizabeth had been dead for nearly 20 years, and she hadn't even known. Her twin sister, the person she had shared 9 months with in their mother's womb, was gone without her ever having the chance to ask for forgiveness. Did she ever try to get her daughter back? Yes. According to the nuns, Elizabeth visited the girl whenever she could, usually on Sundays. The last visit was a week before the accident. She had promised Jessica she would take her home soon. Catherine could no longer hold back her tears. Her sister had fought alone to get her daughter back, and she, who had all the resources in the world to help, had chosen to ignore the situation. Mrs. Brooks, there's one more thing, Robert continued. Elizabeth left a letter at the orphanage to be given to her daughter when she turned 18, but Jessica left the orphanage at 16 to work and never received the letter. Does the letter still exist? Yes, Sister Margaret, who still works there, has kept it all this time. Catherine knew she had to go to Albany, but first she needed to talk to Michael. Your son was becoming more distant and rebellious, leaving the house without warning and only coming back to sleep. That night, she waited for him in the living room. Michael, we need to talk. If this is about Jessica, I already told you I'm not breaking up with her, he replied sharply. It is about Jessica, but not in the way you think. Michael looked at her suspiciously. What do you mean? Catherine took a deep breath. How could she explain such a complicated situation? Son, do you remember how I always said I had no family left besides you? I remember. You always said your parents died when you were young and that you had no siblings. I lied. I had a sister, a twin sister. Michael slowly sat down, processing the information. Had? What happened to her? She left home at 16, pregnant. Our father kicked her out and I did nothing to help her. Mom, what does this have to do with Jessica? Catherine looked her son in the eyes. Jessica is my sister's daughter. She's your cousin, Michael. The silence that followed was deafening. Michael stared at his mother for long seconds, as if trying to process whether he'd heard correctly. What are you saying? The necklace she wears belonged to my sister. She was abandoned at the same orphanage, around the same time. It all adds up, Michael. You hired someone to investigate Jessica. I needed to be sure. Michael stood up abruptly. You dug into the life of the woman I love. How could you do something like that? Michael, you don't understand. If she really is my niece, if she's your niece, then what? Does that change the fact that I love her? Catherine realized she hadn't considered this aspect of the situation. She'd been so focused on uncovering the truth about Jessica that she hadn't thought about what it would mean for their relationship. You're cousins, Michael. You can't... Can't what? Michael interrupted. Be in love. Mom, cousins can marry. There's no legal or moral issue. But it's strange, What's strange is you hiding the fact you had a sister your whole life, Michael snapped. What's strange is letting your niece grow up in an orphanage knowing she existed. I didn't know she existed. Didn't know, or didn't want to know. The question hit Catherine like a slap. Michael was right. She'd chosen not to know, not to get involved, not to help. Where is Jessica now? Catherine asked. She quit her cleaning job after that day, didn't want to work here anymore. And where are you seeing her? She found another job. She works at a retirement home, taking care of the elderly. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now continuing. Catherine spent the entire night awake, thinking about how to approach Jessica. How could she explain such a complicated situation? How could she ask forgiveness for years of neglect? The next day, she decided to go to St. Mary's Orphanage in Albany. The 3-hour drive gave her enough time to organize her thoughts and prepare emotionally for what she'd find. The orphanage was a simple but well-kept building, surrounded by a colorful garden. Catherine parked out front and spent a few minutes watching the children playing in the yard. One of them, a dark-haired girl, looked so much like Jessica. Sister Margaret was a woman in her 60s, with graying hair and kind eyes. When Catherine introduced herself as Jessica's aunt, the nun smiled warmly. Jessica. Of course I remember her. Such a sweet and loving child. She always asked about her mother. Did you know my sister Elizabeth? Yes, I did. A very young woman, but with so much love for her daughter. She came here every Sunday she could, always brought Jessica some candy or a simple toy. Catherine felt a tightness in her chest as she imagined Elizabeth struggling alone to stay in touch with her daughter. You said she left a letter. Yes, it's been with me all these years. Sister Margaret walked to an old filing cabinet and pulled out a yellowed envelope. Elizabeth insisted it was very important that Jessica read this when she grew up. Catherine held the envelope with reverence. It was her sister's last message to her daughter. Would you mind if I took the letter to Jessica? I'd like to be the one to deliver it. Of course, Mrs. Brooks. I think it would be fitting coming from family. On the way back to New York City, Catherine stopped at a gas station and with trembling hands opened the letter. She needed to know what Elizabeth had written. My dearest Jessica, if you're reading this letter, it means you've grown up and I couldn't keep my promise to come back for you. I'm so sorry for that, my dear. I want you to know you were the most important thing that ever happened to me. Every day away from you was torture, but I had to make sure I could give you a good life. I know you must have many questions about who your father is and why I left home so young. Your father was a good man, James Wilson, who worked as a mechanic. He truly loved me, but my family never accepted our relationship. When they found out I was pregnant, they kicked me out. My twin sister, Catherine, sided with the family. She was afraid of losing her inheritance and chose not to help me. I don't blame her for that. We were so young, and she had her own fears. Jessica, keep the necklace I left with you. It's a family heirloom, and one day you might find Catherine. She has the other half. If that happens, I want you to know I forgave her long ago. Sometimes people make choices they regret forever. Be strong, my dear, be kind, and know that even far away, I've always loved you more than anything in this world. With all my eternal love, your mother, Elizabeth. Catherine finished reading the letter with tears streaming down her face. Elizabeth had forgiven everything, even knowing she had chosen money over family. When she got home, she found Michael in the living room, visibly worried. Mom, where were you? You left this morning without saying anything. I went to the orphanage where Jessica grew up. Michael stepped closer, noticing the envelope in her hand. What's that? A letter from my sister to Jessica. She wrote it before she passed. Passed? Catherine looked at her son with a heavy heart. Elizabeth died in an accident when Jessica was 3. She never got to bring her daughter home. Michael sank onto the couch. Does Jessica know this? No. She still believes her mother abandoned her. That's why she's so afraid to trust people. Mom, you have to tell her the truth. I know. But how? How do I explain that I knew she existed and never looked for her? How do I ask forgiveness for so many years of neglect? You knew she existed? Catherine hesitated. Not exactly, but when Elizabeth left home, I suspected she'd have the baby. I could have searched, I could have helped, but I chose not to get involved. Michael shook his head in disappointment. Mom, Jessica deserves the truth. She deserves to know she had a mother who loved her and fought for her. You're right, but first, Michael, we need to talk about the two of you. There's nothing to talk about. I love Jessica, and she loves me. The fact that she's my cousin doesn't change that. But it could complicate things. People will talk. Mom, honestly, after everything that's happened, people's opinions are the least of my worries. Catherine realized Michael had grown a lot in the past few weeks. The situation had forced all of them to face difficult truths. Where is she working now? At the New Life retirement home in the Upper East Side. She takes care of the elderly there. Can you take me there tomorrow? Are you going to talk to her? I'll deliver her mother's letter and tell her the whole truth. The next day, Catherine dressed carefully. She chose simple, understated clothes with no extravagant jewelry. She wanted Jessica to feel comfortable talking. The New Life retirement home was a welcoming place with well-kept gardens and a warm atmosphere. Catherine and Michael were greeted by the administrator, who led them to the main hall where Jessica was helping an elderly woman with physical therapy. When Jessica saw them, her expression immediately hardened. "What are you doing here?" "Jessica, please, I need to talk to you," Catherine said calmly. "I have nothing to say to you. And Michael, you shouldn't have brought your mother here." "Jess, please, just hear her out," Michael pleaded. "No, I don't want to hear any more humiliation." Catherine stepped forward slowly. "Jessica, I brought something that belongs to you." She held out the yellowed envelope. Jessica eyed it suspiciously. "What is this?" "A letter from your mother." Jessica paled. "What do you mean? What letter?" "Your mother left a letter for you at the orphanage. Sister Margaret kept it all these years." "You went to the orphanage?" Jessica asked, her voice barely a whisper. "I did. Because I found out something that changed my entire life." Jessica took the envelope with trembling hands and looked at the delicate handwriting on the front. "To my beloved daughter Jessica, when she grows up." "Why did you do this? Why did you go there?" Catherine took a deep breath. "Because Elizabeth was my sister, my twin sister." The envelope slipped from Jessica's hands and fell to the floor. She stared at Catherine as if seeing a ghost. "What did you say?" "Jessica, you're my niece, my sister, Elizabeth's daughter." That's impossible." "The necklace you wear, I have the other half." Catherine pulled out the necklace she had hidden for years and showed it to Jessica. The half-heart pendant engraved with "From Mom to Daughter" was the missing piece to complete Jessica's necklace. "It can't be," Jessica murmured, clutching her own necklace. When Catherine brought the two halves together, they fit perfectly, forming a full heart with the words, "A mother's eternal love for her daughter." Jessica collapsed into a nearby chair, tears streaming down her face. "My mum, where is she? Why didn't she come for me?" Catherine knelt beside her. "Jessica, your mother loved you more than anything in this world. She fought for 3 years to get the means to bring you home from the orphanage. She visited you every Sunday she could. Where is she now?" Catherine closed her eyes, bracing for the pain of her next words. "She passed when you were 3, my dear. In an accident. She was coming home from work, saving money to bring you back." The cry of anguish that escaped Jessica echoed through the hall. She wept as she had never wept before, releasing years of pent-up pain, abandonment, and unanswered questions. Catherine held her, crying with her. "I'm so sorry, Jessica. I'm sorry I wasn't there when you both needed me. I'm sorry I let pride and fear stop me from helping." "Why?" Jessica sobbed. "Why didn't you help us?" "Because I was selfish and cowardly, because I chose money and social standing over family, because I was afraid of displeasing my father and losing my inheritance. Did you know I existed? I suspected, but I chose not to look, and that's something I'll carry for the rest of my life." Jessica pulled away from the embrace and picked up the letter from the floor. "Can I read it?" "Of course, it's yours." Jessica read the letter in silence, tears dripping onto the yellowed paper. When she finished, she looked at Catherine with a mix of sorrow and understanding in her eyes. "She forgave you." "Yes. Your mother was a far better person than I ever was. But why are you telling me this now? Why not keep pretending I didn't exist?" Catherine looked at Michael, who stood silently beside her, listening to the entire conversation. "Because my son fell in love with you. And when I saw the necklace, when I learned your story, I couldn't live with the lie any longer." Jessica glanced at Michael, as if remembering for the first time that he was there. Michael, we're cousins, he finished. But that doesn't change how I feel about you. How can it not? Jessica asked, confused. Jess, I fell in love with you before I knew about our family. I fell for your kindness, your strength, the way you care for people. None of that has changed. Catherine watched the two young people talking and noticed something she hadn't before. The way Michael looked at Jessica wasn't just youthful passion. It was genuine admiration, respect, deep affection. It was the same look she had seen in James's eyes when he gazed at Elizabeth all those years ago. Jessica, Catherine said softly, I know this is a lot to take in. I know you have every right to hate me for what I did, but I'd like a chance to get to know you better, to try to make up even just a little for all those lost years. Jessica studied her for a long moment. You really are my mother's twin sister. Yes, we looked identical when we were young. Then you must look a lot like her. People always said so. Jessica reached out and lightly touched Catherine's face. Sometimes I dreamed of a dark-haired woman hugging me. Now I understand why your face felt familiar that first day. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now, continuing. In the weeks that followed, Catherine made an effort to get to know her niece. She learned that Jessica had studied nursing at night while working during the day to support herself. She had a natural talent for caring for others, especially the elderly. You know, Jessica, Catherine said during a lunch they shared, your mother was just like that too. When we were children, she took care of every injured animal she found. Can you tell me more about her? Catherine smiled, happy to share these memories. Elizabeth was 2 minutes younger than me, but she always seemed more mature. She was the one who stood up for classmates at school, who shared her lunch with those who had none. Our mother always said she was born with a heart too big for her chest. And you two were close? We were inseparable until we were 15. We shared everything, clothes, secrets, dreams. But when our father started pressuring us about our futures, things changed. How so? Catherine hesitated, but decided to be completely honest. Our father was very traditional. He wanted us to marry into good families, to maintain our social status. I ended up giving in to that pressure, but Elizabeth rebelled. Is that when she met my father? Yes. James worked at the garage near our house. He was an honest, hard-working young man, but our father saw him as unfit for the family. What happened when they found out she was pregnant? Catherine felt the familiar weight of guilt in her chest. Our father gave her an ultimatum: either end the pregnancy and break things off with James, or leave home forever. And our mother, who always deferred to him, supported his decision. And you? I stayed silent. I didn't stand up for my sister when she needed me most. Jessica was quiet for a moment, processing the information. Do you regret it? Every single day of my life. I lost my sister. I lost you. I lost the chance to know my brother-in-law. All because of fear and greed. What if my mother had come back? If she had managed to find me? I think she would have looked for me eventually. Elizabeth was forgiving by nature, but I never would have deserved her forgiveness. During these conversations, Michael watched his mother transform. Catherine seemed more human, more vulnerable, more real than he had ever seen her. One afternoon, Jessica showed up at the mansion unannounced. Catherine was in the garden tending to the roses when she saw her approach. Jessica, how nice of you to come. Would you like to help with the roses? Actually, I wanted to talk about Michael. Catherine stopped working on the plants and turned to her niece. What happened? Nothing happened. It's just... I'm confused about all of this. Confused how? Jessica sat on a nearby bench. I love Michael. That hasn't changed. But now that I know we're cousins, that you're my aunt, everything feels so complicated. Why complicated? People will talk. They'll say it's strange, that it's not normal. Catherine sat beside her. Jessica, can I tell you something about people? Of course. People will always talk. When I was young, they said I was too ambitious. When I married Michael's father, they said I was a gold digger. When I became a businesswoman, they called me cold and calculating. And you know what? They were right about some of those things. Jessica smiled slightly. What are you trying to say? That you can't live your life based on what others might think. You have to live by what you feel is right. And do you think it's right for me to date my cousin? Catherine took Jessica's hands. I think two people who truly love each other, who respect each other, who make each other happy, deserve to be together, no matter what. Even if we're family, cousins can legally marry. And more importantly, you met and fell in love before knowing you were related. That makes all the difference. Are you sure? Jessica, after all the mistakes I've made in life, I've learned one thing. True love is rare. When you find it, you have to fight for it. That evening, Jessica had dinner with Catherine and Michael. It was the first time the three of them sat together as a family. You know, Jess, Michael said, I've been thinking about how strange fate is. How so? Think about it. You came to work at our house by chance. We met by chance. We fell in love without knowing we were family, and that led my mother to uncover the truth about the past. You think it was fate? I think your mother, in some way, guided us to this moment, Catherine said, surprising them both. You really believe that? I never used to believe in anything I couldn't see or touch. But after everything that's happened, after finding you through such unlikely circumstances, yes, I do. Jessica smiled, the first genuine smile since learning the truth. I think my mother would be happy knowing we found each other. I'm sure she would, Catherine agreed. A few days later, Catherine made an important decision. She wanted to visit Elizabeth's grave, but didn't want to go alone. Jessica, would you come with me to visit your mother? Jessica was surprised by the invitation. You know where she's buried? The investigator I hired found the location. It's a simple cemetery in Albany. I've never visited her grave. I never knew where it was. Then let's go together, and Michael, will you come with us? Of course, I'd like to learn more about my aunt's story. The trip to Albany was quiet, each lost in their own thoughts. St. Joseph's Cemetery was simple and well kept, surrounded by old trees that provided shade on warm days. Elizabeth Brooks Wilson's grave was modest, with a simple headstone bearing only her name and the dates of her birth and passing. Jessica knelt beside the grave and placed a bouquet of daisies they had bought on the way. Hi, Mum, she whispered. I came to see you, and I brought your sister with me. Catherine knelt beside Jessica, tears already streaming down her face. Liz, I'm so sorry, she said to the headstone. I'm sorry for everything. For not defending you, for not helping you, for letting fear stop me from being the sister you deserved. Mom, Jessica continued, looking at the headstone. I found the family, I found Aunt Catherine, and I fell in love with Michael. I know it might seem strange, but I know you'd understand. You always believed in true love. Catherine took Jessica's hand. Elizabeth, your daughter is amazing. She has your kindness, your strength, your generous heart. I promise I'll take care of her the way I should have taken care of you. And Mom, Michael said, stepping closer. I'll take care of Jessica the way Mr. Wilson would have taken care of you. With respect, tenderness, and true love. They stayed there for nearly an hour talking to Elizabeth, sharing stories about their lives, memories, and plans for the future. When they left the cemetery, something had shifted between them. It was as if they had finally closed a chapter, as if Elizabeth had finally brought her family together. On the way back, Jessica made a decision. Aunt Catherine, I want to use the family name. What do you mean? I want to change my name to Jessica Brooks. I want to carry my mother's name, our family's name. Catherine smiled warmly. It would be an honor to have you officially as a Brooks. And there's one more thing, Jessica continued, looking at Michael. I want us to make our relationship public. I don't want to hide anymore. Are you sure? Michael asked. People will talk. Let them talk. My aunt is right. I can't live my life based on what others think. Catherine's heart warmed when Jessica referred to her as aunt for the first time. In the weeks that followed, they began building a new family dynamic. Catherine offered to help Jessica finish nursing school, without having to work, but Jessica preferred to keep her job at the retirement home. "It's what I love doing," she explained. "Taking care of people makes me happy." "Then at least let me help in other ways," Catherine insisted. "I can cover your books, tuition, transportation." "Aunt Catherine, you don't have to make up for the past with money." "It's not about making up for anything, it's family taking care of family." Jessica smiled and accepted the help. Michael decided to introduce Jessica officially to his friends and colleagues at the university. Some were surprised to learn they were cousins, but most supported the relationship. "You met before you knew you were related," said Robert, one of Michael's closest friends. "And cousins can marry. I don't see a problem." "Besides," added Rachel, a classmate, "it's obvious you two really love each other. That's what matters." Their friends' support strengthened the couple's confidence. Catherine also had to face reactions from her own social circle. Some friends were shocked to learn she had hidden the existence of a sister for so many years. "Catherine, how could you never talk about Elizabeth?" asked Patricia, a longtime friend. "Because I was ashamed of what I did. Because it was easier to pretend she never existed than to face the guilt." "And now your niece is dating your son?" "Yes, and I've never seen Michael so happy. But isn't it strange? What's strange is two people in love not being together because of what others might think." Not everyone reacted well, but Catherine discovered she no longer cared as much about others' opinions as she once had. 6 months after the reunion, Catherine organized a party to celebrate Jessica's birthday. It was the first real family birthday the young woman had ever had. "Jessica," Catherine said during the toast, 23 years ago you came into this world and brought joy to your mother. Today you've brought joy to all of us. May you have many more years of happiness ahead. And may you know you now have a family who loves you and will always stand by your side," Michael added. Jessica cried with emotion. For the first time in her life, she felt truly loved and accepted. During the party, Catherine announced a decision she had made. "Jessica, Michael, I've decided to create a support fund for young mothers in vulnerable situations. I want it to be in Elizabeth's name." "Aunt Catherine, what a wonderful idea," Jessica exclaimed. "It's my way of honoring my sister's memory and trying to prevent other families from going through what we did." "Can I help organize it?" Jessica asked. "That would be perfect. You have experience caring for people, and I have the financial resources." The Elizabeth Brooks Foundation was established 3 months later, offering financial and emotional support to young mothers who needed help raising their children. Jessica became the project coordinator, working part-time there and part-time at the retirement home. A year after the reunion, Michael and Jessica decided they wanted to marry. "Aunt Catherine," Jessica said during a family dinner, "Michael proposed to me." Catherine smiled warmly. "And what did you say?" "I said yes, but only if you give us your blessing." "Jessica, you have my full support and blessing. You two were made for each other." "Are you sure? You don't feel uncomfortable with the idea?" "I'd feel uncomfortable if you didn't stay together. You complement each other in such a beautiful way." The wedding was celebrated in an intimate ceremony with close family and true friends. Catherine made sure the ceremony included a special tribute to Elizabeth. "Elizabeth Brooks Wilson," the priest said during the ceremony, "though not physically present, we know you are blessing this union. It was through your daughter that this family reunited and learned the true meaning of love and forgiveness." Jessica carried a bouquet of daisies, her mother's favorite flowers, and wore the complete necklace, now reunited with both halves. Catherine cried throughout the ceremony, but they were tears of joy and gratitude. During the reception, she gave an emotional speech. 2 years ago, I was a bitter, lonely woman who had chosen money over love. Today, I'm surrounded by the family I thought I'd lost forever. Jessica, you brought light into our lives, Michael. You taught me that true love overcomes any obstacle. And Elizabeth, wherever you are, thank you for raising such a wonderful daughter." 2 years after the wedding, Jessica and Michael announced they were expecting their first child. "It's a girl," Jessica told Catherine, radiant with happiness. "A girl?" Catherine exclaimed. "Have you thought of a name?" "Yes," Michael answered. "We want to name her Elizabeth." Catherine was deeply moved. "Are you sure?" "Absolutely," Jessica confirmed. "We want my mother to live on through her granddaughter." "And if it's a girl, will she wear a necklace like ours?" Catherine asked. "Of course, it's a family tradition that must continue." When little Elizabeth was born, Catherine was certain her sister had returned in some way. The baby had Jessica's same dark eyes and Elizabeth's sweet smile. "Hello, my precious granddaughter," Catherine whispered as she held the baby for the first time. "You brought my grandmother back to us." Jessica, still in her hospital bed, smiled as she saw Catherine with her daughter. "Aunt Catherine, thank you for giving me a family. Thank you for teaching me what truly matters in life." "What did you learn?" "That family isn't about blood. It's about love, forgiveness, and being there when people need you, and that it's never too late to start over." 5 years had passed since that fateful day when Catherine caught Michael and Jessica kissing. Now they were a happy, united family. Little Elizabeth, now 3 years old, ran through the once cold and silent mansion, filling the halls with laughter and joy. Catherine had become the most loving and devoted grandmother imaginable. The Elizabeth Brooks Foundation had helped over 200 young mothers, offering not just financial support but also counseling and job training. Jessica had graduated with honors from nursing school and now ran a geriatric care clinic, which Catherine had helped fund. Michael had gradually taken over his mother's company, but with a more compassionate and socially conscious vision, implementing employee support programs and community initiatives. One Sunday afternoon, the family gathered in the mansion's garden. Catherine played with her granddaughter, while Jessica and Michael prepared a barbecue. "Grandma Catherine," little Elizabeth said, "tell me the story of the broken-hearted mommy again." Catherine smiled. It was her granddaughter's favorite story, about how two halves of a heart found their way back together. Once upon a time, there were twin sisters who each held half of a magical heart. As she told the story, Catherine glanced at Jessica and Michael, who gazed at each other with the same love as the first day, and she felt grateful for this second chance. Sometimes she still dreamed of Elizabeth. In those dreams, her sister always smiled, as if at peace knowing her daughter was happy and loved. "Aunt Catherine," Jessica said, pulling her from her thoughts, "what are you thinking about?" "I'm thinking how lucky I am to have you all in my life." "We're the lucky ones," Michael replied. "You gave us a complete family." "No," Catherine shook her head. "You gave me a family. You taught me it's never too late to love, to forgive, to start over." Little Elizabeth ran to Jessica and tugged her shirt. "Mommy, when I grow up, will I have a necklace like yours?" "Yes, sweetheart. It's a family tradition." "And will my daughter have one too?" "If you have a daughter, she will." "Good. That way Grandma Elizabeth in heaven will always be with us, right?" Catherine and Jessica locked eyes, tears brimming with emotion. "Yes, my angel," Jessica answered. "She'll always be with us." That night, after Elizabeth had fallen asleep and Michael had left to handle some work, Catherine and Jessica stayed talking on the porch. "Jessica, can I ask you something?" "Of course, Aunt Catherine." "Have you truly forgiven me? For everything that happened, for abandoning you?" Jessica took Catherine's hand. "Aunt Catherine, when I was a child in the orphanage, feeling so alone, I always dreamed that one day I'd have a real family, that someone would love me for who I am, not for what I could give them. And now I have that. An aunt who loves me, a husband who respects me, a daughter who's my joy, a family that chose to be with me." "But that doesn't answer my question," Jessica smiled. "Aunt Catherine, forgiveness isn't something you give once and it's done. It's renewed every day, and every day I choose to forgive you and love you, because that's what my mother would have done." Catherine hugged her niece, finally feeling at peace. "Thank you, Jessica, for letting me be part of your family. Thank you for showing me that family is stronger than any mistake from the past." They stood there, embraced, watching the stars in the New York City sky, knowing that somewhere Elizabeth was smiling, happy to see that love had triumphed over fear and pride. 2 years later, when Jessica was pregnant with their second child, they found out it would be a boy. "What name are you thinking of?" Catherine asked. "James," Jessica replied. "After my father." I think he'd be very proud, Catherine said, remembering the young mechanic who had won her sister's heart. Aunt Catherine, do you regret anything in life? Catherine thought for a moment. I regret taking so long to find you, but I don't regret finding you. Sometimes things happen at the right time, even when we think it's too late. And do you think my mom would be happy with how everything turned out? I'm absolutely certain. Elizabeth always believed love conquers all, and she was right. Little James was born on a sunny spring morning, bringing even more joy to the family. When Catherine held him for the first time, she saw in the baby's eyes the same determination she had seen in Elizabeth so many years ago. "Welcome to the family, James," she whispered. "You'll grow up knowing you are deeply loved." Now, with 2 grandchildren running around the house, Catherine had completely transformed. The cold, calculating woman from before had given way to a loving, present grandmother who made sure to be part of every important moment in the children's lives. "Grandma," little Elizabeth, now 5 years old, said, "Were you sad before we came?" The question caught Catherine by surprise. "Why do you ask, sweetheart?" "Because Daddy said you smile a lot more now." Catherine knelt to meet her granddaughter's height. "You know, Elizabeth, sometimes people get sad when they don't have family to love. But when you arrived, you brought joy to Grandma's heart. And now you'll never be sad again? Everyone gets sad sometimes, but now I know I always have you to cheer me up." The girl hugged Catherine tightly. "I love you, Grandma. I love you too, my princess." End of story. Now tell us what you thought of this touching story about family, forgiveness, and second chances. Do you believe Catherine made the right decisions in the end? Share your thoughts in the comments. And don't forget to like if the story touched your heart. Subscribe to the channel so you won't miss other stories about life's most important values.